Okay, so you can measure your quilt. I have enough room where I lay it out on the floor and I just measure it, or if you have a tabletop, you can lay it on. That's what it looks like on the floor. I measure the sides and I measure the bottom, and then you can measure your material and see how long you need your stripping. So a lot of times I just throw my stripping down because I don't know if I have enough material um, to make the stripping. So in order to see if I have enough stripping, I will cut the strips and lay them across the quilt to see if it's going to measure up. And if it doesn't, well, I have to figure out a different material if I don't have enough material. So before you start cutting your stripping, you want to make sure it's ironed, because if you don't have it ironed pretty smoothly, I mean, it's not perfect, but if it's not smooth, then it's going to be harder to cut as any of the material you cut for your quilts. Like if it's all wrinkly like this, just, go over to the ironing board and iron it up a little bit, because you want it smooth so you're not running your roller or your rotor cutter over big wrinkles. You don't want to do that because then it's going to cut it uneven. So you want to lay your fabric out on your cutting mat and take your ruler, and where you have your little markers at 2.5, if you have to put little markings on your ruler. I have a little black mark here so it stands out more, so that I can eyeball it up from one end of the ruler to the other end, and make sure both ends are even before you start cutting, because sometimes you don't have them quite even, and then one end of your binding is going to be uneven. And that's with any kind of cutting, cutting for quilt patches or anything. So you just want to make sure everything's lined up, that's all, before you start to cut. Okay, so see if I have this lined up. Okay, so I have it lined up here, and I'm going to run my rotary cutter up along the edge, and we're cutting 2.5 inches for your binding. Okay, all right, so what I didn't do was even this fabric up, because I have a wider spot down here than I did up there. So I'm going to cut this off. All right, so we're going to continue down this strip of fabric to make our binding strip. Just make sure the black dots meet and hold it down firmly and cut, just like you did for your patches. All right, more. Sometimes it takes me a little bit to get it even. All right, oops, that one had a little string attached. All right, so got another strip, and I think that's gonna be enough. I have 4 strips. Usually I get 4 strips, 1 for each side of the quilt. If your quilt's bigger, sometimes your fabric isn't long enough, so you're going to need a couple strips per side. And then what you do is we're just going to sew them together. Okay, so we got our strips, and we are going to, hope you can see this on my sewing machine. We're going to sew these together. And so that the seam is not as noticeable and is, I guess it makes it stronger. You want to take your right sides together like this. You're going to put your right sides together. Just even them up and put pins in them so it holds, straight pins. You're going to do it at a diagonal. So you're going to have it on either side of your seam. And then when you flip it over, it's going to make one line. Okay? So what I'm going to do is sew between my needles from corner to corner. And if you need to, well, I don't have that even. If you need to do a line with a pencil from one corner to the other so you can see your corners evenly. I should have evened up those sides of my fabric, but I didn't. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a line for you. So I'm going to sew on that line, and then I'll show you what it looks like. You want to make sure you back stitch so that your stitches don't come out. Alright, so I sewed that line, cut off your thread, and then voila. Now if it's uneven, you can trim that extra off, which mine's a little uneven because the fabric was a little longer on one side. So I'm going to take my little ruler and cut that, make it even. Okay. All right, and then this little triangular flap, you don't need that, so you can also cut that off. You can either use scissors, make sure you leave 1/4 of an inch so you can press it open. Just cut that thing off, and there you go. That's what it looks like. And then you open it up, and I guess my stitching is coming out here. I did not get that straight, did I? Huh. Wow. Let me sew that down again, because when I cut that edge off, it took some of my stitching out. Alright. This again. Got a pin stuck there. As you notice, I have 2 pairs of scissors here. Okay, that still isn't right. What did I do wrong? It's sticking out. My goodness. I'm not being a very good teacher today, am I? All right, let me try this again.